Most of the world religions are still in their early stages of learning how to transform people because they haven't developed this art of sacred criticism, the sacred no, the sacred shadow. Look how long it took us to bring forth a man like Carl Jung who clarified the very notion of the shadow for us, that it isn't evil, it's just what we don't want to see. That's a big difference, big difference. And our unwillingness to see it, what we don't want to see, is the problem. The other important point I hope I make in the book is that the prophets, against most of the rest of religion, localize evil not in the individual sinner, but in the collective. Like, forgive me, I'm not trying to play politics, but with what's happening in America right now, they wouldn't be too surprised at who we elected president. They would say, what kind of country is this? They would critique without any doubt. I can say this. The prophets would critique that sin lies in the collective illusion, the collective hubris, the collective almost enjoying being deceived, enjoying being lied to. Where does that come from? That's Jung's shadow. That, I believe, is much closer to Jesus' understanding of where sin really lies. And it's not where we made sin lie, which I'm going to say 7 times out of 10 was in sexual sin, so called, and in the individual. Always the sinner was the sexual deviant. That finds no foundation in Jesus. And I challenge Christians to disprove me on that. It's almost like, my God, we were blinded. He isn't worried about sexual sinners at all. He's worried about power and money and war and control.
Just to make this really explicit, Richard, why do you think it's so important that we shift our critique away from an individual human and towards collective patterns and collective ignorances and delusions?
Because that's where evil best hides, and so much so that it doesn't look like evil. It looks like the way everybody thinks, the way things are. In Jesus' language, he says, woe to you, Bethsaida. Woe to you, Capharnaum. Woe to you, Jerusalem. And he weeps over Jerusalem. Once you can get the collective to all agree that it's not a sin, it's not wrong, you've won the day. And that's why Jesus calls Satan the father of lies. This emergence of a deceit allowing culture is really problematic. It shows we're in the later stages of cultural decline, that we don't care. So let me pick on our neighboring state here. Forgive me, my many Texas friends, but the prophets wouldn't waste a moment condemning Joe Blow, who owns a gun. They would condemn the entire gun culture of Texas and the United States that thinks this is a way to solve problems. It's so well hidden. Evil is so well hidden in the collective that it was only the last pope in the Catholic world that created the words structural sin and institutional evil and taught rather authoritatively that's where evil lies. Racism, homophobia, misogyny. They're always collectives that we agree, well, they aren't half bad, you know? There's a good reason for them. That's why that evil can flourish.
And to ask a question, what do you mean by the use of the word evil? I think people have different
Well,
associations.
the earliest philosophers that I studied define evil simply as the absence of good. And that sounds like a non definition, but it's really rather helpful because it's saying evil has no substance. Goodness in the Judeo Christian tradition has substance. God created it and it was good. It was very good. Genesis 1 says. Evil is simply not doing that good. Do you understand it? It's an absence, it's a non presence of God. Forgive me, I'm primarily trained as a theologian, so I slip into theological language easily, but I hope it's helpful. Evil is the absence of God. Now, we in movies and literature and art portray it as a dark dragon or something like that. That's the best we can do. But it's always the opposite of God, who is supposed to be portrayed as always and forever good.